Coming up, Matt Chesse joins Illeana in just a minute.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
And now, it's the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast, starring Illeana Douglas. Eavesdrop with Illeana as she interviews Hollywood's most prominent players about filmmaking, acting, and what really happens on the set of your favorite flicks and TV shows.
Hello, everyone. It's Illeana Douglas. Welcome to the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast. Hello, Tamara Berg.
Hello, Illeana.
My lovely co-host, Tamara Berg. We were saying we haven't seen each other in at least a week.
I've been watching you talk to other people a lot, so I haven't actually
been cheating on you.
Haven't been able to talk to you directly much lately.
It's funny. We're speaking to an editor, so we're going to clip this along today.
Yes, we are.
He is mid-work. Matt Chesse, I love it. He's literally working, and he has come to the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast
from the edit bay, and he's going back.
We talk movies. This is the place to be. Next week on the show, I'm going to do a big plug for John Landis. We're very excited about that. Long-time friend, John Landis.
I've told a couple of people, I went to a party last week and told a couple of people that John Landis was going to be here, and they were like,
I know. And our friend Joe Dante is very jealous. He said, you're going to have a competing werewolf director on.
Right.
We have to have Joe back on.
Yes, we do.
Before we officially go into summer hours, because we love Joe because he's one of our first guests. Okay, I want to get right to it because I bragged on the Facebook Live. You know, I'm not much of a ranter or a spouter offer, but I must. I'm not like a sperm whale that's spouting off. No. But anyway, I have to say, okay, I went to the, in my leisure, I went to the I'm officially like an old person, I guess. I went to the Tom Jones concert. Woo-hoo! I went to the James Taylor.
Nice.
It's not unusual, right?
Concert.
Hey,
yes.
Nice one, John.
And I thought it was just me, in front of me, literally the entire concert, the people in front of me, it was dueling. This couple kept videoing themselves. It was bad enough when they were videoing the concert, but now they're videoing themselves singing badly to Delilah. I'm just trying to get out of the shot because they're, swinging their phone back and forth and singing at the top of their lungs and then posting it on Facebook.
Oh, good Lord.
The woman next to them was taking photos and then editing during the concert, picking out her favorites. That's another great thing to do. And the guy next to her, I kid you not, was picking out sunglasses on Amazon. And I was so distracted, and we'd spent all this money, like, to have this fun night. I've seen Tom Jones in Vegas.
Sure.
And it was unbelievable, and you don't know what to do. And then
right, because you're not going to go, hi, can you keep me out of your shot? Oh, Illeana's a bitch, right? Is what some people they'll say.
They're going to get mad at you.
Or I paid money for this concert. I want to do it the way I want it.
So I had just recovered from the experience of Tom Jones, cut to James Taylor, and it was literally like I sit in my seat and 5, 6, 7, 8, a family, mom, dad, her young daughter and daughter's friend, they sit down and Sheryl Crow is the opening act, and literally they weren't in their seats for 30 seconds before the girl FaceTimed her friend and then spent the rest of the concert, again, videoing herself to put on Snapchat or whatever. And again, everyone in the front row, this new trend of videoing yourself has got to end. It's horrifying. And it's so embarrassing. And like, I love, what are people really like, do they need to show, this is where we've come. It's bad enough that they're videoing the show. They need to show someone, hey, I'm at the James Taylor concert
Right now.
I'm singing all I want to do is have some fun there. I'm like, why are you doing this to your friend? Number one, why are you doing it to the people behind you? And why do you
and what about the
need-
artist who is looking
Oh, yeah,
at
the artist.
a bunch of phones in his or her face, not even performing to people anymore?
But what is the need? So my question in midst ramp, what is the need to show your friends that you are having a good time at the concert?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I mean,
you can't ask me because I don't have a good answer for that.
I mean, I'm just trying to analyze it, and then sure enough, there's always one. And then to coincide with the guy buying sunglasses, again, not making this up, guy in front of me playing fantasy baseball, fantasy baseball during the entire. James Taylor, you guys like he's older. He's may never. These are the waning days.
No, but that guy's gonna have some good sunglasses for his next James Taylor concert.
So that's my rant. And somebody else commented on it. They went to see the Broadway show Mean Girls, and a guy on Twitter this morning commented that the girls in front of him the entire time. So this is a thing. Yeah. So this is a thing. This is happening. If anyone has any ideas, just hit me up on Facebook and tell me how to stop them. And now, segue into Matt Chesse, an Academy Award nominated editor for a wonderful film called Finding Neverland. I love that film. Quantum of Silence, of course, James Bond movie, Monsters Ball, The Gift, Kite Runner, which I absolutely love, and the upcoming film Christopher Robin, straight out of the editing room.
Yeah.
Are the bright lights? Please welcome
the Mole
Matt
Man.
Chesse.
Yes,
Right.
I've got a low jack cuff on my ankle, letting people know that I've left the quadrant.
Right.
Well, this is very nice of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Happy to be here.
We're very glad you came.
Thank you. And we're
Sprinted over.
You did? Oh,
Literally did a costume change because I
Love
have
it.
a meeting at the studio later,
Yes.
and they like you to be interesting and creative and bohemian, but they don't want you to dress
love
odd.
that.
So
Yes,
I had to
yes.
but you have a vlog cast, so I had
Yes.
to get my vlog on. So.
People are
I
looking
love
at you live
that.
right now.
Now, give me your face when an editor, when a studio head says something really ridiculous. What's your game face?
I usually look down at my pad. I call it the sad pad. I have like a pad that I write things on or pretend to write
Wait,
things
is this
on.
it? Right here?
Yeah, that's my sad pad. Actually, no, I might need that later. That was
Okay.
safe stories. That was stories that I
doodle
noted.
later.
Oh.
Yes, those are stories that I deemed I could
Matt, I
share
looked
that
at
were
your.
safe.
It says we need milk, butter.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing on this.
Takis. My daughter likes to eat Takis, whatever theirs are. There's some sort of flaming Cheeto chip that eats your stomach out from the inside, but the kids love them.
And do we still? What's going on with test screenings? Are people? Do people still do? I mean, my era, that was the beginning of the horror of test screening. The '90s, I remember. Everything.
Yes, we're full on in the middle of test screenings. I just did
Terrifying.
one the other day, and
Yeah.
they are exactly as you remember them. The guy always opens up with like, "You were one of the first audiences to see,
Yeah.
fill in the name of movie, and you'll notice some things that are not done, and that's all going to be done when it gets to the theater. So don't worry about that." And,
Right.
And then you watch the movie, and everybody's gauging the laughs, and then afterwards you have the really painful control group where they take 20 people
Yeah.
out.
What is that about?
And they say, the moderator says, "I didn't make the movie. I have nothing to do with the movie." And
Right.
you're all sitting right behind them, the people who made the movie. And so
Right.
there's this sort of, and then people
Why
start.
don't you get to? This was my when I did the movie many years ago. To Die For. They
ups.
test screened
Love that movie.
it a lot, and at one point it was almost going to end up on the shelf, and then miraculously got into Cannes, and then everything changed, and they gave more time. But so I literally viewed one of these things and where they pick the people, and then and then Gus Van Sant, everybody stand. The editor is like sitting behind, like white as a sheet. But that was my first thing, being a novice and not really knowing about movies. Going, why does he get to? Why doesn't the actual director get to ask questions? I don't think the audience would care, and in a weird way, I feel like it would give it more context.
the thing that the director wants to know, which would be informative to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the director probably notices, like, oh, that felt laggy, and they you
They
know,
didn't want to probe that. They want to probe
Exactly.
the laggy, if I can
Exactly.
say that on a vlogcast.
Yeah, you can.
But instead they have it led by a guy or gal who works for the studio and is predisposed to quickly lead the group into like, and what didn't work, and did it
Yeah.
play too slow, and what was, what would you take out? And so they start. There's an agenda, that starts getting driven to greater or lesser degrees, and you're
Right.
sort of like, why have we gone here? How do we wind up with this angle in the film?
Exactly.
It's a particular horror that we all
Right. I
experience.
remember and then I will move on from this, but the guy was saying, was there any character that you didn't like? Like that kind of thing, like Humphrey Bogart, I really didn't like him. He seemed very nasty, very mean. And then, again, this whole thing with why likability.
And they'll take the analytic, which they call when they tally the numbers, and they'll go, the villain is not receiving very good scores. How can we up the villain's scores? And you're like, he's the villain. We want him to have low scores. What?
I know.
Yeah.
So that was
It's remarkable.
I thought that was.
I've worked with certain directors who really know how to read those sheets, though, and they won't pay so much attention to the tally and the numbers. They'll actually read the sheets, and they'll read what people are saying, and they'll read between the lines, and they'll glean what they want to glean, and they'll use it to empower the movie rather than just kind of taking the directive, because you can really misinterpret those things.
Can I tell you that a director named Martin Scorsese and Thelma Schoonmaker, who know a thing or two about movies, they used to just read the cards and laugh. They would laugh. Thelma Schoonmaker would go, on pretty much every card on Goodfellas was like F you, screw you, F you, and they would laugh and laugh and laugh.
And people will write the wackiest stuff. Like I worked on a Nicholas Sparks film called The Best of Me. It's like Nicholas Sparks, like a chick flick, and rom-drom,
right?
I guess you would say.
Yes.
And we had a note in one of them that was like, "Why did he leave the book on the engine?" And we were like, what is that? When is there a book on an engine? I don't even know. Like, it was, and the person was infuriated. And it was like one of the reasons they were bringing it down. What frustrated you about the movie? So we thought about it, and the director came back the next day. He woke up in the middle of the night, and he's like, when the guy goes to jump the girl's car in the parking lot of the high school in the flashback, he's carrying a textbook.
Right.
He puts her hood up, and he puts the textbook down, and you see it in the shot. And he's like, check it now. And her car starts, and they start flirting, and he closes the hood of the car. Well, you don't see him extract the textbook. So this person held on to that the entire time they were watching the movie. And when they gave him a piece of paper, they were like, is the textbook still in the car in the flashback? Did they drive away with the textbook in her Honda hood?
Yes.
I'm like, if we really not done a good job if that's your takeaway? That was the thing that you were most bummed about.
Well, I
Or
think
that
people,
person was a librarian.
well, people seem to delight in if they can find some sort of crazy flaw or whatever. Anyway, I love all this inside stuff. I'm going to go back to
I'm all inside. I'm deep inside.
We're deep cuts here. We are deep cuts. That's my whole thing. I think I have
I'm flattered that you have the editor on, because they're not necessarily the people that normally get the lights on them, because they're kind of the plumber. I guess they were like the plumbers of the film business. It's like, because that a couple hours ago, the whole room was heaped deep in shit, and you plunged it, and so the party is starting, and they're like, you can go now. We don't really need you to stick around and tell everybody that the toilet was backed up. So we carry all the dirty laundry. So we don't get out in public much. So it's very nice to be here with
we're
you.
just sitting behind you with lashing you. It's like that's always is the hardest thing. I mean, I keep distracting myself from getting my favorite question. But isn't the first cut's is that just the hardest thing?
The first cut is the deepest, as Cat Stevens once said. Oh, by the way, I heard you talking earlier about the shows you've been seeing.
Yes.
And I'm jamming from here to a studio meeting, and then I have to get down to Anaheim to see Mickey and Mike from the Monkees.
The best.
Great.
Great.
Because they're doing a Mickey and Mike show, which
Yes.
is like, that's all I really want from a Monkees show. So, yeah. I'm going to a dinner theater to see Mike Nesmith and Mickey Dolenz. So I can relate to your Tom Jonesy and, yeah.
It's a good show. I've seen it. I've seen it. Very, very musical. And Nez is in top form.
I love Nez.
Yeah.
I just saw him at the Troubadour. I'm a big fan of his bluegrass records. He's on my Mount Rushmore of rock. I think.
Yeah.
He's
Different drummer.
Big guy. Yeah. Absolutely.
Different drum.
It's on my jukebox.
It is. I dig more of Shelley's blues,
Absolutely.
which he does do on the show.
Yep.
does. I
Linda
love it.
Ronstadt does a great cover of that.
I
She was
know.
my gateway drug to the deep Nez cuts. But yeah, I'm a huge Papa Nez fan.
Oh, good.
But he charges money if you want to talk to him. He's got one of those things on his website where he's like, for $100 you can have a private audience and I'll sign all your stuff. You know, so it's like
That reads
I'm not going-
divorce to
yeah.
me. That
and
reads.
his website is really like he writes long
Eclectic.
blogs about
Yeah.
the deer that come into his yard, and he gives them names and voices, and he does like he
Does
writes
he
about
know
the
David
deer.
Crosby, or are they all?
I think they're all. I think they're all.
They're all
tight.
I
Yeah.
think they're all part of that Laurel Canyon
Yeah,
kind of thing.
exactly.
Anyway, we want to get him on the show. And
Who's
Mickey,
that? You wanna
Nez.
Get them together. I think they are
yeah.
a good double act.
Yes.
They're, they when I saw Nez at the Troubadour, Mickey was in the balcony, and Henry Diltz, who's like the photographer who is like really good friends with Mickey's, he was there, and I think that them doing that Mickey and Mike show together was something they were really stoked about. If you notice, Mike Nesmith didn't participate in any Monkees stuff until Davy Jones died, and then all of a sudden he was like, "I'm in."
I know.
And I don't know what that's about, but I'm glad he stepped in there.
Well, all the history, and plus the movie Head. There's a lot of.
Yes, I worked on the new Monkees television show. Which
Wait a
was,
minute, you're blowing my mind. There was a new Monkees.
I was a PA in LA in '87, and my first foray into LA, and they decided to do a new Monkees television show with Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider and the original guys who did the Monkees. Somebody had the great idea to reboot it.
Yeah.
But this time they were going to do it with musicians cast as actors instead of actors cast as musicians, and so they put together this band and a nationwide talent scout, and then they just sort of stuck these guys out in the valley in a mansion set that they'd made, and sort of were like, okay, do your thing. And they're like, we don't have a thing. We don't even know each other. We just met. And the whole thing was just like, it was really gruesome. But on my last day, I think I wore, you act up at the face about the pad when you write something down. I think I had like I'm a huge Monkees fan, and this is crap, look on my face a lot of the time when I was doing lockup, ringing the doorbell. And I got canned eventually for, I don't know, maybe I had an attitude. But there was a head poster, like a Mylar head poster in one of the trailers. And I really thought about snatching it as I drove away. And just I couldn't get it in my Vega. I was like, damn it. And it was probably Bert Schneider's, and he was a lovely man. So I left it behind. But yeah, I served on that new Monkees show. And you can find it on YouTube, I'm sure. It's
Oh, that's exciting.
gnarly.
They should have had the old timers in. Okay, we're going to get to.
Okay.
Do you remember the first movie you saw and who took you to see it?
Yes, I do. It was in Sausalito, California. I'm a Bay Area boy.
Beautiful.
And,
Love Sausalito.
I actually went to high school with your producer's husband.
Okay. Fantastic.
So, Concord YVHS, class 84.
CHS.
Shout out. Yeah, she went to Concord. So we lived in Sausalito, and I think I was 4. And there was a church up the hill. We weren't churchgoers, but my parents were actors, and my dad was a big movie buff. And one of the kids at the church decided to show movies on Sunday nights. So he got some prints, and we walked up the hill from our house on a Sunday evening, and I saw the original King Kong, and it was the first thing I'd ever seen projected. And I remember being down in the front. All the kids moved down to sit in sort of a pile like that, and the parents were kind of in folding chairs in the back of the bottom of this church. And when they cut to the close-up of King Kong the first time, and he kind of rolls his eyes, and I just flew from the back seat, from the front seat to my mom's lap, just absolutely blew my mind. And then the next week, he showed Singing in the Rain. So within 2 weeks, I saw Singing in the Rain and King Kong, and that was like the hook, yeah.
That was a good one. I love how you say "cut to." You even as a child, you knew.
I also say fade to black.
You knew
and
scene. You knew.
You go to bed at night.
Right, exactly.
So did you? So you said you were hooked, but was it a transition into becoming an editor? Were there? You said you worked as a PA. I mean, were there other things before?
Bay Area was a really cool place to grow up for film because we had George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, and my mom, to supplement being a stage actress, was a casting agent. So she worked at this company called Brebner, which was the big casting agency in the 60s and 70s and 80s in San Francisco. So they cast Bullet and Harold and Maude and Take the Money and Run and American Graffiti and all the Dirty Harry movies and Streets of San Francisco. So it was I was very like aware of what was going on. So it was like being in LA, but getting to be in San Francisco. There was a lot of film culture, and I got to see movies coming a long way off, and then go see them. And my parents were not filtering, like a lot of parents in the '70s, not filtering what they were taking me to. So I'd go see Nashville, first run, and be like, it's just that time. They just drop you in this. It's like throwing you in the pool. You'll swim to the side. You'll figure it out. It was like, why did they shoot the lady? She was just trying to sing. It was intense. Film going in it was like Russian roulette. You just didn't know what your parents were going to drop you into.
My mom and her friend. I've told again this story before. Like, thought it would be a great idea. We went to see El Topo.
Yes, right. Like no handrail for El Topo. There's nothing. You're just out there in the desert.
Just like, what is this?
I love that you brought up Jodorowsky because he's like one of my main men. Like, I just think those movies are so visceral and cool and off the hook, and just like, and when you see a guy sitting in a giant bong in the middle of the desert smoking his own shit. It's practical. It's not a visual effect. It's like he actually built a bong, or when the guy climbs a ladder in Holy Mountain and there's like a bunch of paper mache Jesuses. They had to make those paper mache Jesuses. They had to dress the frogs in the Quetzalcoatl outfits and put them on that. There's no visual effects in those movies. It's like totally handmade, crafty. I love those movies.
It's an interesting thing because, again, I grew up in the era where, children were, seen and not heard, and you accepted that. And so, again, if somebody took you to the movies, it was accepted that it was not understandable.
And they didn't check in with you about it. It's just
right. They talked about it.
They're not.
You sat in the back seat going, that was very odd. But
back seat because you went to a drive-in.
Right.
Right, and that's where they figured you're just going to go to sleep, and that's where you really saw like the Italian blue movies. Or I remember seeing like The Adventurers or something like in a drive-in, and just my mom was like, I don't want you to see violence, but I don't care about the sex scenes. So I would be like, oh, they're burning the town and they're shooting his parents, and she'd like shove me under the glove compartment. And she'd be like, you can come up now, and there'd be a boudoir scene, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this. And then as soon as the pistols came out, she pushed me back under the glove compartment. So I was like, why can I watch the boobies, but I can't see the guns? So
was the art, the art house?
Yeah.
So all of this is seeping in. And did you ever visit any of these sets? I mean, my God, you mentioned all these.
Well, I have a good story about the Bay Area film business. My dad and my grandfather and my uncle are all in THX, the George Lucas film, and they have lines. There's not a lot of lines in THX, but there's like a prosecution scene where Robert Duvall is getting prosecuted, and he doesn't say anything, but like my dad's the prosecuting attorney, and my uncle's the stenographer, and my grandfather is the defense attorney, and so they have this scene together. It's like a family film, and it's like all three of them. And I remember them coming home from the set, and they'd all been shaved bald. They were bald anyway, but they had really taken all their hair down, and they all walked onto the porch. And I opened up the door because they'd been down in like Stanford or something for a couple of days shooting, and I opened the door and I went to my uncle, and he was like, I'm like, Dad. And he's like, I'm not your dad. And I went to my grandfather, and I'm like, Dad. And he's like, I'm not your dad. I'm like, Dad? Like, but they were all back from THX. And I remember that very clearly. And then I think we saw the movie, and I was like, what was up? What was that? So yeah, I mean, I was definitely soaking in all that stuff as a kid. And if I watch anything movie that was made in the Bay Area in the 70s or 80s, like American Graffiti, anybody who opens a door, drives a car, gets shot in a dirty hair. I can tell you, Bill Jelliff, Chuck Dorset. I know all the extras' names because of the casting agency. So,
I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so then basically, did you go to film school? You would did commercials.
I did. I worked in commercials, and I kind of worked my way through school doing PA work and working on like a Whoopi Goldberg movie or a car commercial. They shoot a lot of car commercials in Mount Tam because there's a lot of windy roads. So I made a beautiful $1 in the film business, staying in San Francisco, and went to SF State and studied.
Go Gators!
Yeah, go Gators! Woo! I have a good Gator story that you come back to. Remind me of that. But where was I going with that? No, it's all right. Go Gators.
You were driving commercials.
So I basically made my way down here because I got on the good side of a director who met me on a set and was like, you should come to LA. And then I sort of, my brother likes to say that editing found me rather than I found editing.
And how did you meet Marc Forster?
Well, when I moved to LA, I was working for a TV commercial director named Peter Kagan, who kind of put the finger on me in San Francisco and was like, "You've got it. You've got the shine, and you could come to LA and do anything you want."
Well, that's true with
and
editors.
It was really, and when somebody when you get the big beckoning finger, I've learned that you should take it. It's a very directional moment, fated moment. So I moved to LA, although I didn't really want to, and so I worked. I started off at the production company, and a friend of mine who was also a PA he was a screenwriter and had always been a writer, so he went that way and I went towards editing, and then at some point he met Marc at lap dance, slam dance, lap dance. Yeah, so one of the dances festivals that occur in a small area of Utah. He went to a dance festival and he came back with this relationship with Marc, and they wrote a script together, and he showed me the script, and I was ready to sort of cut everything but a feature. And I read his script, and sometimes when you read scripts, I'm sure you've had this experience as an actress, sometimes you read them and you're like, oh, okay, there was a slow part. Other times it's just like, you see the film. And so I read this and I saw the movie and I really got it. It was kind of like Repulsion and kind of like Rosemary's Baby and kind of like Safe, the Todd Haynes movie. I just really saw it and I was ready. And so I said to my friend, I really want to cut this. My friend Adam Forgash, who wrote it with Marc, and he said, well, you should meet Marc. So Marc and I got together and cut an actress's reel, which is what you do when you're learning, when you're kind of coming up. You're like, everybody's got a reel or a commercial.
Right.
So we spent an afternoon cutting this reel, and he was like, I think this could work. This is good. We got a groove. So he let me take over that film, and I delivered strong, and we've been partners ever since. He was very appreciative.
That's so great to have a relationship. Like that with a director, because then it's And
he knew me when we like both came up. We both sort of had all these milestone moments where it's like we got into Sundance. Halle Berry got nominated for an Oscar. Halle Berry won the Oscar. So we have all these things that we share where you kind of think like it's just you've hit the mountaintop. Like I made it into Sundance with my first feature. Like I'm good.
Right.
That's cool. And then the next thing, Halle Berry gets nominated, and then she beat out Sissy Spacek for In the Bedroom, and I never thought that was going to happen. So then you're like, oh my God, she won the Oscar, and we were connected to that. And then the next year I got nominated. So we're doing a James Bond movie. It just kind of you're having these moments where you're like, is this really going down? And it was all shared with Marc. So we have wonderful associations and things we check in with on each other.
That was one of the things I noticed about your career as an editor. It's certainly not like, that's the same type of, that must be fantastic to go from indie film
my agent loves
Bond movie.
My agent loves it. Melanie Rams here at the Gersh Agency. My team, her. But yeah, because there's nothing that Marc hasn't taken on that. So there aren't a lot of genres that I don't have an example of being able to do.
Exactly.
So that's great. And that's just because he's, got eclectic taste, and he's got really good taste, and he doesn't let himself get pigeonholed, and he just wants to always be challenging himself. So we move along. And a lot of times you do get stuck in a camp. You're like, oh, you're like a Judd Apatow.
Exactly.
Or you do indie. You're like, you do those sorts of movies. You're in mumblecore, whatever that is. Or, and so you get prescribed to this kind of plateau place, and they sort of quadrant you off. And he just sort of sidestepped that for me, and by always sticking up for me and kind of moving us forward, and it's great. I'm very, very cool. He has great taste, so I'm super lucky.
I want to go back to the film Monsters Ball. When you're doing a film like that, or do you have any? I feel like there's more of an awareness now of I'm cutting this for an Academy Award-winning president, which there's nothing more irritating than sitting home and going, I'm not going to vote for you based on the cutting of this film. I know you're trying to push for an Oscar.
Right.
But it feels like that predates what I'm now seeing in movies. But were you aware in any way, shape, or form, like, if I cut this the right way, she could...
There's a scene where she has a breakdown and wants to... get it on with Billy Bob sort of unexpectedly. She said, "Made me feel good." She sort of and that I think that material, like there was a kind of a big deal on the day. Like they had shot it over 3 days, and it was a sex scene. And Halle Berry, who we didn't really expect to get, was there, and she was a hot commodity. And so there was a bond on the fact that if a frame of it got out onto the newly invented interwebs, that we would all owe them $50 million or something. And so it was very high there was a lot of attention on that sex scene, and Marc really wanted it to kind of feel like Don't Look Now, the Nicholas Roeg film.
Right.
And so he spent some time to make it kind of an interesting sex scene. And it's a kind of sad sex scene. It's kind of a bummer. Like it's like kind of desperate. And so I kind of knew when I was working on that particular, not so much the sex scene, but the footage that leads up to it.
Right.
And it was really chewy, kind of good footage. And there was one take where they're kind of just sitting on the couch being those two people. It was kind of a wide shot, and she just kept going, and she kind of went through the whole scene. And I'm like, I'm not going to cut this. I'm just going to let it roll. And I think I felt at that point that particular take, I was like, if I just let her show her stuff, if I just let her do this, what she's doing in this, and I don't cut into it so that people can't say, well, you created that performance, or she's, you cut around something. It's like, there it is. Like, she just did that. She went from here to here to here.
Right.
And by the end of the scene, they're sliding off the couch, and so I just sort of stuck that in there, and I think I thought at that point that could get her, that's pretty strong for Halle. She was really, really amazing in that movie, and Billy Bob took her to a deep place, and so I was just sort of very electrified, with those dailies, and I did have a hunch. I kind of thought she would probably get a notice for being Halle Berry and doing something so street,
Right.
And she did. Yeah. But I didn't think she'd beat Sissy Spacek in the bedroom. I was like, it was surprising. I remember I was in Texas on a commercial because before she got, you have that period before things hit where you've done a great movie and then you're on a Chevy commercial and you're like, we just got nominated for an Oscar. And they're like, yeah, well, what about the wheel hub? And are you showing the torque and the payload? They don't care that you're in an Oscar race or you're cutting their Chevy commercial. Right. So I wound up in Texas, and my wife was in LA, and we were on the phone, and we were waiting for the Best Actress, and my wife started screaming. I was like, she won. And I was like, she hasn't won here yet. Because there was a lag in the broadcast, and so it was like a spoiler alert. I'm like, I'm waiting to see what happens, and my wife's screaming. I'm like, yeah, she won. And then I watched her win.
I want to, because we don't have a lot of time with you, because like I said, you're working. So I
can come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
I want to move on to Finding Neverland.
Sure.
Because, of course, then you were
that was the next one. Then that was a great.
So now you're known. Do you suddenly feel like, oh my God, now I got to craft Johnny Depp's performance here?
That was another. I mean, it's weird when you're editing. I think that and I tried to tell this. I taught at AFI last year. I ran the editing department at AFI, and I tried to explain to my students that when you get charged with that sort of footage, you don't really get overwhelmed by that is Johnny Depp. You just kind of get into the granular nature of it, and you're looking at it like scene by scene, take by take, and you just you forget about all that. It doesn't really matter what you're cutting, if it's a pedigree dog food commercial or Finding Neverland. You're just in it,
right?
And then you pull back and you're like, wow, this really adds up. Or you see it with an audience and you're like, well, that was really effective. All those decisions by the time we get to the end of the movie is destroying people, and it's great. But at the time it was exciting to go from Monsters Ball to Finding Neverland because it was a big. It was a big move. I remember there was a shot that they did on the fantasy sequence on the pirate ship before he did Pirates. We had him doing a pirate, and they shot it on a green screen on a lot at the back lot at Pinewood. And I was in LA. I wasn't on the location, and I got the dailies. And it started like a football field away, and they just tracked in and went up onto the deck of the ship. And he turned around and started doing his scene, and I was like. I was like, whoa, we're not in Kansas anymore. It was like I'd never dealt with something like a visual effect or just something of that magnitude. It was very apparent that we were in a different playing field. And but then after a second, you're just like, but what's the best take? And you just move on, and you're like, where?
Do you get into the groove of that person? Because again, there are some Johnny Depp movies, when you think of like Ed Wood, and
I love Ed Wood.
He seems to just need a breathing element, and then I saw him in like Murder on the Orient Express, and I just thought, that's not how you use Johnny Depp. Just like cut. Like he never really got to do anything.
Right. He was like, he was sort of like stunt casting or something.
Right.
I feel like he sometimes needs a prop. Like he'll like to have a gold tooth or crazy accent, and that movie he wanted to have the big mustache that J.M. Barrie wore. He was like, I want to be authentic. I want to look like J.M. Barrie. And he doesn't not look like J.M. Barrie. So they did a camera test, and they put the mustache on him. And everybody was like, you look like a child molester, and you're going to be playing in a park with a bunch of little kids. Like, you can't even, no, we're not going to have the mustache. So they tore the mustache off of him because there was a dicey thing about that movie where he's sort of in the park with a bunch of little boys, and they're inspiring him and like, come over to my house and play. And, but we just totally sidestepped that because of like his connection with the kids.
Yeah.
Freddie Highmore, who's gone on to do lots of other stuff.
Yeah.
They did a scene where he wrecks a playroom. He figures out his mom's sick, and he gets upset, and everybody leaves, and he trashes the playroom, and Johnny just sort of sits there and watches him and lets him express his pain. And I think as Johnny was watching Freddie shoot that scene, he was like, wow, this kid's bringing his A game. And I think it sort of shook him out of a place where he might have been coasting or doing. I mean, he was just like, I'm gonna meet him there. Like, he was challenged to honor what Freddie was bringing, and so I think we got a really great performance out of Johnny because those kids were so real that he just kind of was taking care of them and developing a relationship with them and horsing around with them off set. He had a fart machine that he would play, like at a dinner table scene. If the kids were supposed to be laughing, he'd trigger the fart machine, and he got really into shepherding their performances and provoking them, and he connected with them. And I think that's what the movie shows you, is that, that's all real. He was feeling all that stuff. So I think that's a really true performance from him.
Yeah, it's a
very honest.
Beautiful film.
Yeah.
And I must discuss The Kite Runner, which is another just incredible
film. I can't believe
just a complete.
And when we were working on Stranger Than Fiction at the time that we got The Kite Runner, and my Marc will just, he's very subtle and very low key. I don't want to do an impression of him in case he watches it, but he's Swiss German, and he's very kind of zen, and he's like, we're going to do this book, The Kite Runner. Are you familiar with it? I'm like, yeah, my wife is freaking out on that. We're doing The Kite Runner? He's like, yeah, I just get back from a meeting. I think we're going to do The Kite Runner next. And I just couldn't believe that we got to do that book, because it was such a big read, an important book, I think you could have done something. You could have done the very easy version of that and shot it, in Mojave, and used Ben Kingsley and the brown skin guy from Lost, or just done like kind of a Hollywood version. And he went to Kashgar, which is in northern China, and he cast kids from Afghanistan. He went to elementary schools in Afghanistan, and he brought kids out to Kashgar to go for authenticity. He slept in a yurt above the snow line. I mean, he committed to making something that was authentic, and Khaled Hosseini was kind of his, that was his. He just wanted to please Khaled Hosseini. That was sort of his focal, his bullseye.
Right.
And Khaled loved it and took it to his dad, who basically was Baba, who was the father in the book. And before his dad died, he showed it to him on his deathbed, and it was a very emotional experience. And I wept.
Oh my God, it's so sad.
At the Avid, if I don't cry, then nobody else is going to cry. So I would just sit there and just make myself cry. Like, I could make myself cry a little more, and I would just, it's like it was a real. That's one of those movies that is like, if you get people emotional in the first reel or two, or at least hitched up, like if you hear people kind of going, then you're like, oh, they're gone. By the time we get to the end of the movie, they're gonna, they won't. So you would hear people in test audiences kind of like, and it wasn't that there was something particularly sad going on. It was just the dignity that the movie gave those characters and the humanity of it, like To Kill a Mockingbird, kind of just dignity. And so even there was nothing really emotional going on, you were still kind of like, oh, the humanity. And I loved that movie.
Is there temp music that you use again and again?
I can't believe you brought up temp music on The Kite Runner, because that is a very interesting. I used Explosions in the Sky. I almost used exclusively the Friday Night Lights soundtrack by Explosions in the Sky, which is not what you would think you would put on that, but I was listening to it at the time because I just worked with Brian Reitzel, who was a music supervisor on Stranger Than Fiction, and he'd given me the CD. And it's really weird as an editor, I find. Sometimes things find you find the things you need, or the things you need find you when you're working on a particular project. And that kind of fell into my transom, and I digitized it with a lot of other scores, but it just kept coming back, and it was not Afghani. There was no three-stringed oud being played, but it was very first world.
Right.
But just cut to the heart of that movie, and so I was very committed to that score. I use that a lot. I use that, and there's an Aphex Twin double CD called Ambient Works 1 and 2 that works for anything because it's very non-specific. It's emotional, but it doesn't prescribe the emotion. It's really good. It's really those are kind of crutchy things that I use.
No,
but,
it's some certain things always.
Yeah, temp score is a big deal.
Huge.
Yeah.
Some movies without a temp score.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of amazing experiences with scoring. I use a company called Ash & Spencer that I met through commercials. They do mainly commercials. I think they may have only done a couple other things. Mainly they've done 3 of our movies. They did Machine Gun Preacher, and they did Stay, and they did Monsters Ball. And they'll write me music based on the script. So they all get like a collective, and they'll just get together and respond, and they have all this time and money in a studio, not money, but they have a lot of time, so they'll just play all the stuff they're feeling, and they'll give it to me, and then I can put it where I want, and that's my temp score, but it's ours, so there's no demo love. You just kind of go, that can live there, and so it's that we call it pre-scoring, and it's the sublime way to work because I get to take music that I can keep and put it where I want, so it's sort of like you don't have to like listen to a composer and go, what are you doing there? Or like, that's not what I was picturing. You're choosing it, and then they hear it, and you go, oh, you put that piece there. Cool. Let's gank it to the picture now that you chose that. And that's a great way to work.
Any like heartbreak scenes? You're like, oh, I can't believe that film, and I had to cut that scene. Like I still mourn scenes that were
cut away.
Allison Anders and I, we talk all.
Tell me about it. What ones?
It was Grace of My Heart. We had a extended scene, and our producer, Mr. Scorsese and Thelma, we screened the film, and they didn't think it went well in screening, so they cut the scene. And Allison and I always, we sort of thought it hurt the film. But
was it during the time when things went to the DVD? So that is sort of always the rationality is like, hey, it'll be a great extra scene. So it lives somewhere.
Right, but
but it doesn't. It's not where it should be. Yeah. Right.
So it doesn't work. So things like that.
I think I'm sort of the mind that most movies get where they need to go, and I stick with I support the cut that winds up, whether it's through machinations with the studio or test audiences. Like I'm not into the Apocalypse Now redo thing where you sort of go back and watch them get together with the Playboy bunnies. I'm like, there's a reason why Playboy bunnies take off and we don't see them again. I don't want to see Chef and Miss September canoodling in a helicopter in a swamp. I just did, it's like, so I'm cool. I'm cool with the one that got done. I don't hang on the stuff that falls by the wayside because I kind of trust the process. I think it kind of works itself out.
Okay, you have to go. So
we have to go. We didn't even get to your current film.
I'm just winding up.
So you have to come back.
We have to come back. We didn't even get to James Bond. How did you feel the first time you cut the scene, Bond, James Bond?
Well,
do you just
die? It wasn't going to be in the movie. Marc decided that he didn't want to do that in our Bond movie, and we were like, "What?" He's a very eclectic guy. So it was. We almost didn't have that. I think I don't think that it's actually in our movie. I don't think he says.
He never says Bond. What about Shaking That Stirred?
No, we were just after the origin one, so we didn't get to do. We didn't get to do kale hemp salad. No, but I did have a moment with Daniel where. Which was very exciting. The whole time you're on a Bond movie, you're just like, what time is it? The whole time you're on a Bond movie, you're like, I can't believe this is happening.
It's time for you to go.
Where's my time?
It's 10 of 3.
Okay. So yeah, you're sort of like, I can't believe this is happening. And we had a teaser trailer that they put together that was super boffo, and we were still shooting at Pinewoods. They were gathering everybody to watch it, and there was a very dog and pony show. And the only way to play it was you had to have somebody in the cutting room play it out of the Avid to the theater that was downstairs. So I'd run down to the theater and they say, they just cut B camera, play in the teaser trailer. And everybody would shepherd in and I'd pick up the phone and say, okay, press play. So they were like, okay, they just cut the A-team. It's the last one. We just got to do one more. And so I ran down the stairs and I ran up into the theater and the lights were going down and Daniel was in his tuxedo at the top of the stairs. He's like, how you doing? And he stuck his hand out. And it was like Spider-Man. It just shot web in my face. I was like, you're not real. Like, it was just absolutely like avoided my bowels. Because I'm like this with him and then he just pops off the screen and stuck his hand out. And I was like, don't do that. So There's a lot, and the whole Bond thing is just a pinch me moment. But we'll talk about it next time.
Yes, we will.
Cutting villains
All right.
and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Matt, thank you so
when
much.
does Christopher Robin come out? August 3rd.
Christopher Robin comes out August 3rd.
Okay, so we're
in
gonna
a
have
theater
to
near
see it.
you.
back around then. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Please come
you
back.
can buy Illeana's book. I blame
Yes, you
Dennis
can.
Hopper everywhere. Look
Everywhere.
at us on Facebook.
Yes.
Website illeanaspodcast.com.
We're
Woo!
running. Everyone's life is like a movie with a
And
beginning, a
scene.
middle, and an end. And this is the end of our podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for
We're
having
live.
me.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.